A great deal of my time at school was spent just daydreaming. I would go to class, I'd sit down in the chair, and as soon as the teacher started to speak, I'd be off in my own daydreams. And I do remember certain classes, maths was of interest, science was fun, and I'd pay attention in those classes. But for the vast majority of my classes, I can barely remember a thing, and I was just daydreaming, and it's quite amazing that I even got through them. And I did very badly in most subjects. I did very well in the subjects that I paid attention, and I did terribly in the subjects I didn't pay attention. And that was school. I didn't know about ADHD and that kind of thing in those days, but focus was a very big issue for me. And it carried on into my college years, where I slowly started doing better, but I still battled quite a lot with it. And then I became a tour guide in Namibia, and I'm not really sure why, but I was highly motivated to do well. And I started trying to figure out ways to make myself focus. It was the first time that I was coming across books about the topic, and usually not directly about it, but things that gradually helped me. And so over the years, I managed to figure things out and do better and better with my own focus. And I'm by no means an expert, but I've found certain things that work for me. They help me become a pretty good tour guide. They help me um, transition to a software developer. And most recently, I've been learning Spanish and engaging in online communities, especially in Reddit, um, about learning languages. And one of the things, the way that we learn languages is just by consuming a lot of content in that language. It seems very simple. You just sit down and watch some YouTube videos, but it still requires a fair bit of focus to make it work. I know some people are not that concerned about it, and they can do other things while they consume content. But for me, focus has been something I've prioritized in any study endeavor that I've taken up. And at the same time, and one of the reasons for even making this video is that my elder son has been diagnosed with ADHD. My younger son probably has ADHD to a smaller extent, and focus is an issue with them with their own studies. My kids are practically grown-ups, but still it's an ongoing issue in their lives, and it's kind of been a fun journey for me to help them figure out how to maximize their own study potential. So I'm just going to throw out some ideas that are my main ways of dealing with it, and they may or may not be some of the better ways to do it, but it's over the last 3 decades of really trying to dig into this problem. These are the things that have come up for me to work the best. So there's kind of 2 broad categories. Some things are things that I do in general in my life that better me, that translate into better focus, and there are other things, the little techniques that I use when I'm studying. So the more general things, I think by far the biggest one is exercise. In the times that I'm consistently exercising, I find my focus is way better than what it is when I'm not. It's and I'm talking about exercise in a fairly general sense here, but walking, doing little plyometric exercises. At the moment, I play volleyball once a week. Things like that just make a massive difference to me when I'm doing it versus when I'm not doing it. Luckily, through most of my life, I've been somewhat of an active person and enjoy getting out and doing things. I was very fortunate in my guiding career to be spending a lot of time out in the sand dunes, climbing sand dunes, pushing quad bikes when in the dunes, hiking, climbing hills, and all those things contributed a great deal to helping me focus. So exercise is definitely the biggest thing. I think, and I'm from what I've read, I'm pretty sure that my reading of the science is that's backed up fairly well with science. With exercise, one of the main things is that people just don't stick to it, and so I think the easiest way is to start an exercise routine that's really tiny, and just start doing one thing, and don't quit. The biggest thing is just carrying on. If you've got one thing going, I often start just with, if I've had a period when I don't exercise, I start just doing step ups on my chair. So I just turn my chair around, step up with my one leg, step up with my other leg, and do about 100 of those, and consider that a workout. And then I'll just add some more to that. Then I do some push-ups, then I do some squats, and gradually build up from that. And for the first week or so, I may not do terribly much at all, but within a short period of time, I start getting motivated, and then I'm back into exercise. So the biggest thing with getting into exercise is really just getting that momentum of keeping it going. So I find the easiest way to get that momentum is just to do something super small and keep it going. So that's the one thing. Another thing is diet. I think just eating clean, eating fresh things, getting nutrient density, the simple things, the things you know to do, avoiding too much starches and carbs, getting fiber in your diet, getting adequate protein, getting good oils and avoiding bad oils, stuff like that. All the normal stuff. I'm not a nutrition expert, but I take my nutrition very seriously, and it makes a big difference in my life. When I'm eating clean, my brain is clear. When I'm eating junk, my brain is not clear. And yeah, so I would say after exercise, that's the next biggest thing. And then another thing for me that's been a big game changer is meditation. And it's another thing that, like exercise, that people just struggle to implement. And I think it can be that there's two ways of thinking about meditation that can be problematic. The one is that it's supposed to be this major mind-altering experience, and I find that not to be a useful way to think about it. And the other is that it's this mystical religious thing, and I think that's also not a useful way to look at it. My way of looking at meditation is purely that I'm training attention, that I pay attention to what I'm paying attention to, and go deeper and deeper into attention. And it can be very hard to start, and probably the best way to start is to use an app like the Waking Up app, and just follow guided meditation in the beginning, and maybe forever. But I find meditation to be a game changer in focus, because essentially my way of doing meditation, my view of meditation is really all about attention. It is the gym for attention. So that's a big one. All of those things are really things to do outside of when you're studying, and then the rest are kind of things that I do during study sessions. And these things are essentially little hacks. So a big one for me is using the Wim Hof style breath holds. So if you know Wim Hof, where you do a lot of, let's say 30 deep breaths, and then hold your breath for as long as you can. I do a much simpler version of that. I might just breathe in like 10 times really hard and then hold my breath. And this is my main way of kind of getting out of thought loops. So if I'm trying to focus on something and I just can't keep my focus and I've got other things spinning around in my brain, doing long breath holds, holding your breath until you really have to breathe, and doing that 3 or 4 times in a row, it's almost impossible to keep thinking about silly things that are going on in your brain. It's a very, very useful for me personally. I don't think, I'm not sure whether Wim Hof himself teaches it as a focusing technique, but it's I'm not even sure how I came to use it like that, but it's been enormously effective for me. Whenever I'm really struggling to focus, I do that. So at the moment when I'm watching Dreaming Spanish videos, if I'm finding that I'm just totally zoned out and I'm thinking about other things and I'm not watching the video, I'll do 3 or 4 sessions of breathing deeply and then holding my breath. If you don't know who Wim Hof is, you can Google it. Wimhof. He's kind of silly and kind of fun, but it's an effective technique. Certainly is for me. The other one is pretty simple and kind of relates to meditation, and that's just boredom practice. I know that there's been quite a lot spoken about this on the internet, but it works for me. So simply taking time to put my phone out of reach, switch off devices, switch off anything like YouTube, switch off music, and just spend some time being bored. So this for me really worked well especially for programming. So if I want to focus deeply on programming, I will just spend some time just zoning out and not allowing myself to do anything until I sit down and do programming. The basic logic behind it is that we crave doing stuff. We crave some this is where the whole idea of dopamine fasting came from. The name dopamine fast might have been poorly chosen, but if you just consider it boredom practice, it, for me at least, it works very well. Another important thing for me is avoiding context switching. If you are familiar with a concept, it's been talked about online. People like James Clear from Atomic Habits. Context switching means you're jumping from one thing to another, and you carry the last things turning around in your subconscious when you move on to the next thing. And so it's pretty important to stick with one task for a good enough period of time that you allow yourself to focus on that. Tons of information about that online, so I'm not going to go too deeply into it. The other one is sort of FOMO, fear of missing out. And for me, this is not about what other people are doing or something like that. It's literally about fear of missing out on my own good ideas. So while I'm trying to focus on doing one thing, I think of 5 other things that I could be doing. And so one of the best things for me has just been to keep a list going, and I write all these things down that I suddenly want to do when I'm supposed to be doing something else, as a promise to myself that I'm not going to forget about them and I'm going to get back to them. And very often, once I'm done with the thing that I'm working on, it turns out that those other things weren't that interesting anyway. But sometimes it is. So keeping a list, so that very much in the, if you know the idea of getting things done, David Allen, your mind is not a good place to keep things on paper or keep things in a trusted system. And this is just a minor hack in that direction, where things that you feel like you should be getting to or suddenly seem more important than the thing you're doing right now, just writing it down helps you to put it aside for the time being and let your mind get back to focusing on what you're doing. It's like a promise to yourself that I'll do these things. And then the final thing is just asking questions about the material. So I do this quite often with Dreaming Spanish videos when I'm trying to watch YouTube videos in Spanish to increase my comprehension. If I'm finding I'm not focusing, I'll ask myself, what have they been doing? What are they going to do? Why do I like this video? What's interesting? Simple questions, just a few questions, and it often helps me get back to focusing on the material. So that's just a roundup of my own little hacks, things that have worked for me. I'd love to know what works for you, and thank you for watching my video.